What's going on, everyone? Welcome into the South to Central Florida Sports Report. I'm the host, Ken Landis, and I've only got one thing to talk to you guys about today. And it's been a pretty hot topic, maybe even a white-hot topic. And that white-hot topic is, of course, the Miami Heat being white-hot for their playoff run, as their playoff run is always labeled white-hot. So, a little bit of a giveaway there if you're a Miami Heat fan. But on today's show, that's all we're talking about. We're talking about the Miami Heat and their road through the playoffs. And we'll also go ahead and hit on each team in the Eastern Conference as well. The Western Conference, who cares? The mainstream media talks way too much about them, so we'll give some love to the Eastern Conference here. We'll look at the entire playoff picture, look a little bit at each team here. And even though this is the South to Central Florida Sports Report, we'll still talk about some other teams, but of course we will mainly focus on the Miami Heat. So a pretty bumpy ride to the finish in the NBA's Eastern Conference, as seeds 1 through 2 were really the only ones that were set in stone from March 27th and now today being April 13th, Friday the 13th, mind you. The standings changed a lot and only 2 seeds kept their spot. So, really interesting. I think actually maybe it was the 3rd seed, or a 3rd seed as well. I think it was the Pacers who held their constant spot at 5. But other than that, it was a wild ride, up and down, very close games. 1 or 2 wins within 3 seeds or 4 seeds up the ladder in the standings. So, a really interesting way to finish out the year. And speaking of standings, we're going to go ahead and look at the standings as I predicted in 2 shows ago, as what I would think they would be at the end of the year. So we'll go ahead and look at those, and we'll also take a look at how right I was, or if I'm just a total idiot. So here are those predictions I mentioned that I made back on March 27th of this season, and as you see, I had the Raptors winning 60 games, and the Heat winning 44 all the way down there. I think I messed up the game count. I think I made it 83 games for the Bucks and the Heat. I don't know why, but that was my bad on the math there. So there's my predictions, and here is the NBA's final standings for the regular season. And I was at least right on 1 and 2, which were really the only guaranteed ones. But as you see, I was kind of close on a couple teams. One, I thought the Raptors would beat the Heat in the final game of the season, which would have put the Heat at the 7th seed instead of the 6th seed, so they would have been matched up against the Celtics, which I'll talk about in a second. I would have really loved to have them matched up against. But here you see you've got Raptors. I was really close on, 2 games off by the Celtics. I was right with the 3 and 4 seed records, but as you see, the wrong team. Pacers, I was 1 game off, and the Heat, I was spot on, except for somehow I got an extra loss in there, and same with the Bucks. And then the Wizards I was just totally wrong about, so let's forget that. But moving on here, we're going to go ahead and look round by round here, or in the first round we're going to look at each matchup in depth here. So obviously we're going to start with the 1 versus the 8 seed, and a couple keys to this matchup. As you see, the season series was tied between these 2 teams, despite the Raptors just blowing away the Eastern Conference. And the Wizards ended the season kind of stumbling to the finish line. As you saw, I thought they would finish probably 5th in the conference. They stumbled all the way down to 8, and the Raptors ended, decently hot. I wouldn't say they were white hot or anything, but we're gonna go ahead and say that the Raptors are gonna take this series in 5 games. I just don't think the Wizards are gonna have it this season. So moving on to the 2 and the 7, this one's an interesting one. This one I think has probably the most potential to be an upset alert. A 2 and a 7, you wouldn't expect that. You'd probably expect that more from a 4 or a 5 or a 3 or a 6. But as you see, the season series is also tied. But the Celtics have just lost, they lost Kyrie recently, and also they lost Gordon Hayward to a very gruesome ankle injury. So both teams finished, above 500 in the last 10 games. And I think the X factor in this series will be if the Greek Freak can be the star that everyone wants him to be for the Bucks. And I just think that they'll put up a fight if he is able to do that. But even with all of that, and despite the Celtics' injuries, I'm still going to pick them in 6 games. So I have Boston moving over the Bucks in that series. moving on to the matchup that I am most excited about because I'm a Heat fan, but also because of who we're matched up against. So here are the game notes, or the series notes, if you will. Series tied 2-2 again. Now here's the interesting thing. The 76ers are missing Embiid for Game 1 at least, and they've also won 16 straight games heading into the playoffs, which is absolutely remarkable. But if you look closer at it, only 2 of those teams that they beat down the stretch during that 16-game winning streak there were only 2 playoff teams out of 16 teams that they played, 16 games, and I believe one of those teams was the Celtics. So that kind of shows you something. It's kind of hard to determine, what the 76ers are and how they're actually going to be. So that makes it rough to kind of predict this one. And, me knowing the Heat, I know they've been very inconsistent this season. And I'm just hoping that they can be consistent in this series. And I believe if they can stay consistent in the series and Whiteside can step it up just a bit more, I think the Heat will take it in 7, and that's what I'm going with. So I guess there's your first upset of the playoffs. Moving on to the Cavs and Pacers. This one's an interesting one as well. Both teams are coming in really hot at 7-3 in their last 10. The Pacers have won the season series, however. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, but the Cavs have LeBron James, and when you have that guy, you're most likely going to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals and even the NBA Finals. I think LeBron's been to just too many straight finals. So I'm just going to go with Cleveland in 7 here. I think the Cavs should be a little bit on upset alert, but I think this one, as well as the Raptors, are written in stone. I could definitely be wrong about the Bucks and the Heat series, but we'll see. We'll be optimistic for the Heat going forward because this is a show about the South Florida sports teams that I grew up loving. All right, and here you see my final Eastern Conference playoff predictions. As you saw, I already went through the first round. Now, the whole reason I think that the Heat would match up against the Celtics well is really just because of those injuries. And if the Heat are able to beat the Sixers, I think the Sixers have been a better team as of late than the Celtics. So I think the Celtics would have a tough time, well, not maybe a tough time, but it would be a pretty good matchup with the Heat and the Celtics. And then I've heard a lot about the Cavs and the Raptors and who would win, and I've really listened to whatever other people had to say as well as doing some research of my own. And I just don't think the Raptors, or what people like to call them, the baby dinosaurs, are ready to take down the Cleveland Cavaliers and LeBron James. So after all that trade mess that the Cavs had, I think the Cavs will beat the Raptors. And then I don't think the Heat will personally be ready for the Cavs. It'll be an interesting series of maybe only 5 or 6 games, but we'll see. So I'm going to pick the Heat to make the Eastern Conference final, but not win it. So I'll have the Cavs moving on to the final, probably to face the Rockets or the Warriors or someone along those lines. But I don't really care about the Western Conference. It's been hyped up in the media all year long. Nobody's talked about the East, so I figured let's give the East some love and just talk about the East. So, but once again, I hope it's really not Cavs and Warriors. That's one thing I really don't want to happen. So that's actually all I've got for you guys, a quick 10-minute preview or so of the Eastern Conference playoff picture. I'm excited for it, just mainly because the Heat are in it. At the beginning of the season, to be quite honest with you, I was not excited for the NBA because even people like Charles Barkley was like, I believe he had a quote, he said, I have to sit up here and pretend to not know that it's going to be Cavs-Warriors finals for the next couple of years. And that was just like, well, I think he's kind of right there. He has a point. So, but I'm hoping the Rockets can actually make it out of the West this season and I'll be excited about basketball again because I love an underdog. I hate repeats. In the NHL playoffs, I don't want to see the Penguins repeat or three-peat this time. So it'll be interesting. It'll be fun. It'll be a good ride. It'll be good to see the Heat back in the playoffs, the white-hot playoffs. Hopefully they'll break out those white-hot uniforms again. So I'm really excited, guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed this segment. I hope you enjoyed hearing about the Eastern Conference playoffs, what I think each team will do, what each series will pump out for us NBA fans. But if you did enjoy it, I'd love for you guys to subscribe or to share this with your friends, like it on here as well. Maybe, share it on Facebook, all that other good stuff. Tweet it out. Make it go viral. That would be really fun, as I'm aspiring to be a radio broadcaster, hopefully someday for baseball, but, I wouldn't mind some basketball as well. So that's it, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you all on the flip side. Take care.